Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thank you guys for joining me. I'll be your astrologer today, and in this video, we're gonna be taking a look at this up and coming full moon in the sign of Cancer. Now, if you guys like my videos and you wanna see more of them, please subscribe to the channel. Click that bell button below so you get alerts as to when I have new videos out. I'm here Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays using tarot and astrology to make sense of what's going on in the cosmos. Well, guys, I'm excited. We're going to be diving into the very first full moon in 2026, taking place in Cancer. Obviously, a deeply emotional and kind of nurturing lunation, which I think is a perfect way to kick off the new year. And it's all about release, healing, and reconnecting to our roots. Now, we're taking a look at this early. We actually just completed the new moon that we had in Sagittarius. And so on January the 3rd, 2026, we're going to see the full moon taking place. Now, I'm here Central Time in Texas, so it'll be taking place at 4:03 a.m. That's going to be closer to 2:04 a.m. or 2:03 a.m. on the Pacific Coast, and happening at 5:03 a.m. Eastern Time. Adjust your time zones accordingly depending on where you are, but obviously it's happening in the early morning. Now, the full moon in Cancer is also known as the wolf moon, and something that's interesting about this is that it's actually going to be the time of the year that we're seeing the the moon the furthest away from the Earth, but we're going to still feel quite a big emotional impact from this lunation. The degree that it's taking place in is going to be 13 degrees of Cancer. So if you have any personal placements, 12, 13, 14 degrees of Cancer, it'll be impacting you guys the most. So if you are a Cancer sun, moon, or rising, pay attention. Equally, if you have anything around 12 to 14 degrees of the cardinal signs, so Aries, Libra, and Capricorn, you guys are going to be feeling the effects through the opposition or the square. But I think for the most part, there's just some really interesting kind of emotions and kind of themes that kind of come up with this full moon in early January, which is really setting the stage for just a gangbusters amount of oppositions that we will be seeing the first half of the month, as a ton of planets, Mercury, Venus, the Sun, and Mars, are all going to be trailing through the cardinal sign Capricorn, Earth sign, making oppositions to Jupiter in Cancer. And that's what a full moon is. We actually see the sun in one sign, the moon in another sign, highlighting and showing the polarity and the complexity of these two signs in our charts. And if you guys stay tuned to the end of the video, I will take you through the 12 rising signs and talk a little bit about where this is taking place, how to work with it, and how to navigate, and some predictions for you guys also. So, when we have this full moon, the themes that we have revolving around a full moon are always going to represent some kind of culmination, some kind of completion. So you're gonna have to put on your thinking caps, go back to 6 months ago when we had the new moon in Cancer, and think about what seeds were seeded at that time. So I'll give it to you guys right here so you can see. But that was the new moon that we had in this sign, so right here. And how could we forget this new moon? This was a new moon that was in conjunction to Jupiter. Obviously, Jupiter's in Cancer this year into next year, and it's in its exaltation, so it makes everything more emotional, more sensitive. The topics of Cancer-related themes, home, family, the real estate market, things connected to our roots, our ancestors, all feel larger than life. Now, even though that's a beautiful conjunction, very lucky, it was forming an opening square to Saturn and Neptune in Aries. So there was this challenge of personal boundaries, personal limits, changes revolving around our identity, our willpower, our determination, and really kind of showing us that if we are not kind of checking in with what's going on with our physical bodies or what's going on with our personal needs, it was going to materialize as some big challenges with home, family kind of related topics. So that new moon seeded this, and we should probably see some of the same things getting highlighted under this full moon. And oh boy, do we see it. So let's go back to the full moon so you guys can see what we're looking at here. And I will go through all the aspects so you can see those, and we'll kind of talk about what they mean. But basically, once a month, we have a full moon. And so this brings some kind of an illumination to the two signs that are involved, and then obviously some kind of release. So it's really the peak of a lunar cycle that all the emotions are kind of coming to the surface. Full moons do highlight hidden truths, and there can sometimes be things that are revealed. And we gain clarity on what we kind of began in this most recent new moon over the summer. The full moon also naturally, it highlights this polarity. So that balance between opposing signs, in this case, Capricorn, cardinal earth, ruled by Saturn, tradition, out in the world, responsibilities, and Cancer, which is more kind of internal, emotional, private, and a little bit more kind of, focusing on what's going on behind the scenes. So when we see this full moon coming up, really it's encouraging us, rather than kind of falling into the trap of picking an opposing side, it's trying to get us to integrate both sides for emotional wholeness. And thus, the full moon is kind of born. So this is a time really for letting go maybe of things that no longer serve us. It can also be about celebrating certain achievements, especially in the Cancer kind of area of your horoscope, and honoring the feelings that are coming up at this time. Now, a full moon being in its home sign, obviously the moon is at home in Cancer. This is a sign that is associated with the moon, is really going to give an extra dose of this focus on home, family, emotional security, maybe nurturing ourselves or other people. For some people, it can be about motherhood or relationships that we have with mothers or mother figures, but also our roots and our ancestry and kind of, like I said, our inner emotional worlds. So this is a full moon that's really calling us to honor vulnerability. It's all about creating safe spaces, I think, especially with Jupiter in Cancer, and releasing old emotional baggage that's kind of coming up. And it's very likely, because this is a full moon that's going to kick quite a bit, because I'm looking at the aspects as the moon comes into conjunction with Jupiter and then squares Chiron within about 24 hours of this full moon, that you're definitely going to see some waterworks. There will probably be people who are really feeling extra sensitive, maybe nostalgic, definitely a little bit more protective. And we'll see themes revolving around belonging and actually healing generational patterns. So self-care is going to be necessary. I also feel like that opposition to all the planets in Capricorn adds an extra amount of tension that we wouldn't typically see during a regular full moon. And this is really reinforcing that we have to balance our private emotional needs with kind of public responsibilities, be that our career, our status, or a relationship to superiors out in the world. So like I said, Cancer risings are going to be feeling this the most. So if you're a Cancer sun, moon, or rising, it's going to light up your first house. And I think everybody's going to feel it, but the cardinal signs in particular, anybody who's going to have anything around that 12 to about 14 degrees is in kind of the direct line of either an opposition or a square. You will experience probably some really strong kind of like activations as a result of some of these harder aspects. And cardinal energy is known for initiating change. So it could definitely, for some of you guys, spark this emotional breakthrough, but it can also trigger some conflict. So be mindful of that. Now, when we think about the degree theory of this full moon, it's 13 degrees. And if you guys follow degree theory, you know that 13 degrees carries the energy of Aries, right? So we've got a Cancer full moon at an Aries degree. The positive is that we can be taking instinctual action when it comes to protecting our home, protecting our family, taking action with moving, making big changes in our kind of domestic zones. And this is a very bold, kind of pioneering, assertive, sometimes impulsive and warrior-like degree. So 13 of Cancer is adding a little bit more of this kind of fiery drive to emotional matters. Some of us may feel more compelled maybe to take action in protecting our home and our family, or installing like home, kind of home security systems, or, doing things around the house that's going to be improving the home security. And I feel like this is also going to really bring up this energy for a lot of people of needing to kind of assert their boundaries when it comes to home and family in a very fierce way. Now we can find that there is these new pioneering ways of kind of emotional self-care that are coming up, and it's about taking accountability and responsibility for our emotional boundaries. For some of us, it can really bring about the courage to face certain vulnerabilities kind of head on. Just watch for a tendency to be impatient, maybe a little bit defensive, and obviously we can feel a little crabby with some of the oppositions that we're seeing to Capricorn and then the incoming square to Chiron and Aries. Now, the Sabian symbol that we read is going to be associated with 14 degrees, because we're going to round up. It's actually 13 degrees and 1 minute. So we're going to read 14. And the Sabian symbol for 14 degrees of Cancer is a very old man facing a vast dark space to the northeast. So this is an image that really kind of invokes ancient wisdom. Obviously, it can be about contemplation, especially of the unknown. And it's about kind of the faith in the face of kind of like a vast mystery. So when we think about Northeast, especially when it's kind of connected to kind of occult traditions, the Northeast actually symbolizes the direction of spiritual forces that are entering into the earth. So I think for this full moon, it's really inviting us to kind of draw on this inner wisdom and some kind of ancestral knowledge, you know, to navigate emotional depths or uncertainties, maybe having certain family traditions that we are kind of relying on, especially within the home. And I think that this full moon is really all about transcending the fear of the void, because this really talks about, through the Sabian symbol, some kind of emotional unknown. You know, what's going to happen with the family situation, what's going to happen in the world, you know, what's going on with our home, that kind of stuff. And it's through this kind of like timeless insight and really trusting and releasing that leads to some kind of renewal. So we want to honor, I think, ancestors and elders at this time. I think that's a wonderful way to kind of play this. I think that it's also about recognizing that there is a lot of kind of polarizing energy that's coming up with this full moon. It's important to reflect and take time, you know, to kind of be alone, to have some kind of quiet time for meditation or for rest or for doing some kind of spiritual practice, and really embracing, I think, some of the mystery that can kind of come from, you know, some of these more emotional cycles. Now, you guys know me. I always tell you the aspects are what are really going to kind of determine or bring about some of the themes of a good new or full moon. And I know good and bad's all relative, but when we think back to that new moon that we saw that was seeded over the summer, conjunction to Jupiter, right? Big opportunities for renewal with home and family. Squares to that Saturn and Neptune represents this questioning of ourselves. Can I handle it? Can I do it on my own? You know, am I kind of facing some challenges or some obstacles? Are there some things in the past that I have to kind of shore up before I figure out what direction I'm going in? And so we should see some probably hard aspects either to something in Aries or involving maybe Mars, for example. And we got it, guys. We have it across the board. So this is, in my opinion, a very active full moon, and I think it really is setting the stage for just the kind of bombardment of some of the oppositions that we're going to see going into January. So if there's any takeaway before I get into the weeds here, pay attention to what the full moon brings up for you, because likely it's going to be showing you what's out of balance or what's out of whack, that we have to kind of find the middle grounded throughout the entire month of January. And so even though this is a full moon and you go, okay, well, it's done, it's complete, the truth is that now this full moon will literally break down and kind of prepare until it's going into eventually what is going to be the next new moon. So this will be setting the stage for stuff that's going on for about 4 weeks' time. Well, the next, you know, full moon that we're going to be seeing obviously is going to be taking place in Leo, and it'll be, you know, now kind of bringing in and kind of bringing up some of the energies revolving around the eclipses, which are going to start kind of showing up at the beginning of February of 2026. So, you know, it's going to be quite an intense, I think, month with some of the lunar energies that are kind of shaping up. Now, when I look at a full moon, the first thing I look at is the ruler, right? And in this case, it's pretty easy, right? The moon's in its home sign in Cancer, so you don't really have to look too far to see what the moon is doing. But it's important to think about the aspects that it's making. So every full moon is going to oppose the sun. So the sun is in Capricorn. We've got the moon that's in Cancer. And the moon isn't really making too many aspects, right? It's only making several oppositions to what appears to be Venus, the sun, and Mars. Now, we also see that the moon is going to be coming into a sextile with the south node in Virgo and a trine to the north node in Pisces, which is pretty favorable, especially because the nodes deal with the moon. So it's about these fluctuations with emotions and things changing with the collective. And that's really it. So on the surface, yeah, you see the oppositions and you go, there's not a lot that's kind of happening, but I'm thinking about what happens after the full moon takes place, and right after it's going to oppose Mars in Capricorn. And then later on, we'll see the moon coming in conjunction with Jupiter in Cancer, which is going to light this chart up like a Christmas tree and square Chiron in Aries. So it's some of the same kind of that pressure that we saw with the new moon this past summer. So the biggest thing that I look at is probably the fact that the moon is going to oppose Mars and the moon is going to make an opposition to Venus. That really stands out to me. So with that full moon in opposition to Mars in Capricorn, right? And Mars is also conjunct the sun. So we see that this Mars kind of cazimi that's been kind of setting up the second and the third, where Mars and the sun are coming into conjunction, and it's just all work, go. And the emotional kind of exhaustion or the hangover that can kind of come from this full moon. So this is obviously really highlighting emotional tension. Moon in opposition to Mars frustration or anger can definitely surface around the time of this full moon, and it can really be the themes of Cancer and Capricorn. So it can be around, home versus work balance. Now, Mars in Capricorn, it has this drive to achieve, and really what it wants to do is it really wants to continue to push forward and build some kind of long-lasting legacy. But it's clashing with the moon's need for rest and reflection. It makes it a little bit moody or a little crabby. So we can see the potential for there being arguments, but also I think there can be some motivation to build new emotional security structures in our life. So the effects of the moon in opposition to the sun and Mars, we'll just put them together here, is definitely, impulsive reactions, but we want to channel some of this energy into productive action like home projects, right? Or getting the parents involved, or, being more focused on kind of creating a work life that's going to help kind of satisfy and suit what we need on an emotional level. That Sun-Mars conjunction is really fueling a lot of ambition. It's really about assertiveness. But that opposition to the moon really can create this inner conflict between like the ego and the drive versus feelings. And it can make us very passionate in our pursuits, but it can also bring this risk of burnout and potential kind of power struggles at home. Now, the full moon is also in opposition to Venus. So that's interesting because Venus is now, you're going to see, especially about, like I said in my horoscopes, the 6th of January throughout the 11th, Mars, Venus, and the Sun are all going to be conjunct in Capricorn. So there's going to be a lot of action going on in that area of your horoscope. But with the moon being about emotional kind of relations and how we feel and our family, and Venus being more about kind of like relationships and like values and like money and partnerships themes, there's something that's really clashing here. And I think that that's also like a really big challenge with this full moon. Likely, the emotional needs that are coming up at the time of the full moon, which is getting highlighted, is actually going to oppose values and relationships and commitments, especially to elders or to bosses or anything in regards to our career. And many of us are going to feel like there is this desire to kind of nurture or focus on the home base. And then there is this clash that's kind of coming up with this more practical kind of restrained expressions of love and values of Venus and Capricorn. So that will definitely have us reflecting on security and partnerships. We can feel that there is some coldness that's coming up in relationships, or maybe we're reevaluating our worth. Now, something else that's interesting is that the full moon is in the sign of Cancer, and it's in the same sign as Jupiter, which is in its exaltation. And so if you guys look, this is what I was talking about. So the full moon is really early in the morning on the 3rd. Then you're going to see it oppose Venus and Mars very early in the morning. And then it looks like the moon is going to start coming into conjunction with Jupiter right around 4 p.m. Central Time on the 3rd. And then right after that, it's going to come into a square with Chiron. So later in the day, this is a full moon that's really going to kind of kick quite a bit. And that conjunction to Jupiter exalted means that really there's a lot of growth that's kind of going on. Jupiter's retrograde though, so it means that we're kind of reflecting internally until about March of 2026 when it does go direct. And this is going to amplify emotional expansion, family blessings, home growth. And that conjunction happening, or the full moon happening right around the time of the conjunction later in the day, brings optimism, right? At least it brings some feeling of protection and nurturing, but it's going to be more internal. We're going to feel delays and frustrations with things going on that are kind of getting delayed on the home front. So there will be this internal review that we're going to have about what we need emotionally, what our faith is around our home or our family. Maybe we are focusing more on emotional abundance. So it does give us the opportunity to heal family wounds. And I think that there can be a lot of generous feelings that can come from this. But obviously we can feel a little oversensitive, and starting to see some of that square to Chiron is definitely going to bring up some wounding. Now, the full moon in Cancer will make a sextile to the South Node in Virgo, and it will make a trine to the North Node in Pisces. I like it. I think that a lot of people are going to be more focused on what's going on with the planets, but we have to remember that the nodes are directly correlated with the moon, and it deals a lot with where we've been and what we're kind of getting out of emotionally, what we're releasing versus where we're going in the future. So I think those sextiles, especially to the North Node in Pisces, the trine that it's going to be making really focuses on this harmonious flow towards some kind of spiritual growth. And Pisces is about healing, releasing, sacrificing sometimes. It's also maybe about being more kind of in touch and empathic and sympathetic to other people. And I think it can be really wonderful for tuning into intuitive guidance. The water signs are known for being a little bit more intuitive and a little bit more sensitive. So that intuitive guidance that's coming up with the trine to the North Node is going to make it easier for us to release old patterns and really kind of embrace empathy and also tapping into our dreams. The sextile that we're going to see to the South Node in Virgo is really going to be touching more on, this opportunity to kind of let go of the daily grind, to let go of bad habits, to make changes to our schedule, to make changes also with our health, and be a little easier on ourselves and like not feel like we need to be so critical and be expecting, perfectionism, type tendencies. And this is really going to be about balancing service with some kind of emotional flow. Now, here's where we get into the stickiness. The stickiness is going to be this moon conjuncting Jupiter, and the moon is the dispositor of Jupiter, squaring Chiron and Aries. Okay, and so if you guys watched my Jupiter square Chiron video, I kind of talked about how right around the end of December, the Jupiter, Chiron square was kind of coming back again, highlighting some wounding issues, some personal issues, maybe feeling a little bit like the black sheep or kind of like the odd man out, and some emotional wounds that are coming up. So this is going to trigger that again. And as we go through January, you'll see Mars square that, the Sun will square that, Venus will square that, Mercury will square that, and also oppose Jupiter at the same time. So this full moon for me is kind of like the red flag warning that's like, hey, these are the things that are going to potentially come up. And if something is a problem during the full moon, I would really want you guys to pay attention to it, work with it consciously so it does not potentially get to into a situation in later, January where it just kind of blows up, because that can happen. But I think with that square to Chiron and Aries, talks about this ongoing wound revolving around self-worth, independence, and that versus nurturing, challenges with home, challenges with family. And it does give us healing opportunities, especially with Chiron being direct now, through emotional vulnerability. But there is potential for there to be some triggers. Now, we see also that Mercury is in Capricorn now, and Mercury is going to be sitting at the time of the full moon about 2 degrees. So it is squaring Neptune. It's squaring Saturn too, but it's more closely in a square with Neptune. And so there is some potential here for there to be some confusion in communication, misunderstandings, maybe, some people being a little bit idealistic versus practical thinking. It does make it good for creative inspiration. It does make it good for kind of daydreaming, but nothing that's going to be really grounded and like clear in terms of communication. So I do feel like people get very emotional. They don't know how to find the words. They don't know how to express themselves, and that could be an issue. And then we also see Saturn and Neptune in Pisces are direct now, and they're in a sextile with Uranus and Taurus. And so this has kind of been happening recently, like the tail end of this last month. Obviously, this is going to bring up for a lot of people, grounding our dreams into reality. And it does talk a lot about creating, boundaries, but doing it in a kind way, doing it in a compassionate way. Yes, it can kind of sometimes physically or financially upset the apple cart, right? That can happen. But I think that with the moon coming into a sextile with Uranus later on the 3rd, and then the moon hitting Jupiter, trining Saturn and Neptune, like it may be important to finally just create these boundaries and be very clear about what we can and cannot do, or what does or doesn't feel good. So that way we can kind of better navigate, the month ahead, and also finally kind of bury the hatchet if there has been some like long-standing kind of home or kind of work dilemmas. What you guys would probably benefit from during a full moon, if I were to say, some ritual ideas I would be like, you got to nurture yourself. This is all about nurturing yourself. And I know some people are, maybe still taking time off of work. They're going to be home more. They're going to be with family. Maybe they're hosting family, or they're going to be, spending more time with their kids, or maybe they're just trying to get kind of things in order around the home before they go back to work. But if you are doing that, take time to nurture yourself. And that means if you have to take a bubble bath, if you have to have some comfort food, if you need some family time, I think that's a wonderful way to kind of honor the energy of this full moon. Very simple. But if you're feeling like you're carrying some emotional baggage that's kind of coming up during the time of this full moon, it's important to talk about it. Or if you don't want to, if you'd rather, you can journal. Cry it out, right? Obviously, I think there's going to be a lot of tears that can kind of come up for this. I think like the Capricorn stellium can be very kind of monotone and very kind of stern and serious, and kind of like sometimes repressed is what we can kind of see with that energy. And the opposition to Jupiter in Cancer, especially retrograde, is not realizing just how much we're holding on to emotionally and how sensitive we can actually be. And so full moons are about that release point, especially with some of the trines to like Saturn and Neptune. I think some people are just going to feel like there is just frustration coming up, and they have to talk about something and they have to kind of cry it out. Now, definitely, I think to better balance some of the oppositions, we got to set boundaries. This is, boundaries maybe at work, or boundaries maybe when it comes to your home life, or things that you need to do to better protect your emotions or your family. Obviously, I'm talking about this more from like a general sense. So if you're an Aries rising, you're probably nodding your head and you're like, that makes sense. But you'll have to look at the houses that Capricorn and Cancer are both in, because there's something there that's kind of, pulling in two different directions, but it's going to represent the emotions and how you feel about that tension and what you're actually going to kind of show up and do about it. Now, with the Mars and Venus tensions that are kind of coming up because of that opposition, I'm going to tell you guys right now, avoid reactive arguments. Easier said than done when the Sun is conjunct Mars, because you see a lot of people that want to get really bossy when it's in Capricorn. You see a lot of people who are really just kind of like, this is the way that we're going to do it. This is the way we've always done. And whether it's an older boss that's, just got a frame of mind that's not going to change, or you've got an in-law or a parent or an older sibling or somebody who's just going to be a little bit of like a bully or a boss, a lot of us can get very triggered with this full moon. And it's important to communicate your needs calmly and try to diffuse the conflict if at all possible. Thankfully, Venus being there makes me feel like it can kind of help soften the blow. But I think that to also work with this, we want to work with some of the trines and some of the sextiles that we're seeing. So trines that we'll see later in the day to Saturn and Neptune is saying it's really time to meditate. It's time to rest and recuperate, take time to be alone to reflect. Maybe it's about practicing forgiveness and like learning to let some things go. Maybe the sextile to Uranus and Taurus is you realizing that the emotional disturbances aren't worth, dysregulating your nervous system, and that it triggers a bunch of security issues or trauma or food-related things, or, other things that can impact you physically or financially, and it's just time's up. You don't want to deal with it anymore. I think the Jupiter retrograde is about really reflecting on emotional growth, and I think that it's about learning to not force expansion, because it may not be time to force all of these things at one time. And that Capricorn opposition, is going to want to take action, but it almost feels like it's really going to be highlighting for some of us where we're not just quite ready yet to make some of these big emotional home or family decisions. With these squares, I would say just be gentle, focus on self-care if some wounds come up, and definitely avoid escapism or misunderstanding or like kind of distorting things or taking things personally, because that can definitely happen with like the Mercury-Neptune square. As for what's going to play out in the world, the micro and the macro usually kind of reflect a lot of the same. So I think out in the world, we're going to see themes of security versus authority and structure. That is going to suggest that there's going to be news revolving around housing crisis, right? And maybe new policies that are going to help families. Maybe there's going to be emotional responses that are going to be happening to leadership. All that kind of cardinal energy and Mars being there means that there's possible conflicts in government and also connected to borders. So countries that have a strong Cancer or kind of Capricorn prominence, like the USA is a Cancer sun chart. I know India is a Cancer moon. Capricorn can be very much kind of connected to very cold places, or it can be, I think there's some association with like Mexico. You have to look at the country charts, but you're going to see that there's going to be what the residents or what the kind of citizens want versus what's going on with like the politicians and the leaders. And with the opposition with Jupiter retrogrades, people going, we can't afford housing. We're having issues with, being able to, take care of communities, or there's too much growth happening, or there's not enough kind of support or, help. And then it's going to be whether or not, leaders are going to be jumping in and doing some really big things to help some of their communities or not. And if not, then you're going to see people who are going to be kind of crying out for help. So we may see a lot of very emotional public events, probably some family related laws that are going to be coming up, or nurturing initiatives that can be happening globally. I would watch for water-related issues like floods, because that can happen when we see, full moons in Cancer, especially with some of the trines to Saturn and Neptune. I would also say that this is probably going to be highlighting women's or like maternal rights, getting highlighted globally in some way. But for a personal effect, this is really where it really pays to know your chart. So pull your chart out, take a look. If you have anything, I would say around 12, 13, 14 degrees of the water signs, it may be a little bit easier for you to navigate because it's going to trine. For the earth signs, you're going to see sextiles. Unless it's Capricorn, you're going to see an opposition. It's going to be the fire signs, and I think some of the air signs that may have a little bit more of a challenge with this, because you guys are dealing with elements that aren't really similar to you. We'll talk about where it's kind of hitting in your horoscope in just a second. But I would say focus on realizing that there is just going to be this heightened sensitivity. I always call it, being kind of crabby under some of these hard Cancer moon kind of aspects. Watch for old emotions to surface and then let them release. It's really a good time to get clarity around home and family needs versus your personal ambitions. And that means sometimes we have to set work aside and we have to talk to family and see what's going on and figure out what's going to be best overall. Or just feeling that emotional kind of stress and pressure if we're feeling like there's just too much output and we're not taking enough time for ourselves. I like the idea that there could be potential for healing breakthroughs, but I do think that some people are going to experience mood swings or they're going to see defensiveness. And it's great for emotional resets and I think really kind of strengthening our own inner security. Rituals associated with Cancer are anything with water, by the way. So whether you want to bless your home for the new year, if you want to clean the floors and smudge, or if you're wanting to, bring something in to kind of spiritually prepare, your home and your family for the new year. Moon water is a great thing to make during a full moon in Cancer. So you can charge water under the moonlight. You can use that to clean your home or you can use that to bathe in. Definitely, I would recommend a release bath. So maybe doing like a salt bath with like Epsom salt, and I would add some lavender or some chamomile and visualize letting go and then soak in the bath and then pull the plug and sit at it until the water drains out. You can create an ancestor altar. So you can put out, family offerings or, photos of ancestors. And we want to thank and kind of release generational patterns and kind of ask them for their assistance. Or putting anything out that's symbolic of like the ocean or like crabs. Like if you have shells or if you live in like a coastal community, sometimes just going and being by the water can be really therapeutic and a great way to kind of ritualize this. But definitely my favorite for Cancer full moon is like home cleansing. I like to open up all the doors and windows, sweep everything from the front door all the way out the back, vacuum, do everything, and then I'll take some water. Sometimes I'll use moon water, but I'll just use like salt and lemon and Florida water and wipe down all the counters and wipe down all of the floors and just kind of get the vibes out of the house, So it's great to also declutter and really focus on kind of having like an emotional fresh start with a full moon like this. So with that being said, I'm going to talk to you guys about how this is going to be impacting the 12 rising signs. And I'm going to be looking at this from the perspective of the whole sign system. So if you are wanting to know how this is going to be impacting you guys, I highly recommend listening to your rising sign, because this is going to tell you which house this full moon is going to be taking place in. And like I said, it's going to really pack a punch. Really, I would say the 3rd into the 4th until we start to see the moon work its way out of that sign. Cardinal signs, 12 to 14 degrees. Be prepared for some of the oppositions and the squares that are coming. I'm really going to focus not just on the house that the full moon is taking place in, but I'm going to kind of try to pepper in some of the oppositions to Capricorn and the squares to Chiron, so you get a bigger picture and a bigger and better understanding of how this full moon is going to play out. Because I think you guys are going to hear a lot of astrologers that are going to say, full moon that's in Cancer, it's beautiful, Jupiter is there. And I respectfully kind of in advance disagree. I think that whatever's coming up needs to come up. And for some people, it may be really great. So if you have any like sextiles or trines to that particular 13 degrees, maybe it's a little bit easier to navigate, but look at your chart as a whole. Now, I use the whole sign system. If you're a Placidus user, I would recommend just finding where 13 degrees of Cancer is in your chart. That's where you guys are going to be able to kind of see which rising sign you have to listen to. Listen to your rising sign to see exactly where this is going to kind of land in your life. Definitely consider listening to your sun sign, because I think a lot of it will apply. But the moon sign might actually really resonate with a lot of you guys. And because we're having a full moon, it's a lunation. Also, it's in the sign of Cancer. Give me some feedback. Let me know, you guys, what resonates more, your rising sign, your sun sign, or your moon sign. I have a feeling a lot of people are going to think that their moon sign really kind of resonates this go around. All right, so we're going to start with my Aries and my Aries risings. What's up, Aries? You guys are going to be experiencing a full moon in Cancer, which will be taking place in your 4th house. So it's going to be illuminating the themes of home, roots, family, and also like your inner foundations. I think this brings a deep emotional focus for you guys to your private life, possibly feeling a little bit more nostalgic, bringing up some family dynamics, or the need to really feel like you have to secure your home base. Now, I predict for my Aries risings that there is going to be, I think, some like revelations about ancestral patterns or like home-related decisions that need to be made. Some Aries risings are going to find that there is some tension that's coming up with authority figures, okay? So this could be a parent, a boss, a grandfather, an older sibling, and I think that that's going to kind of peak. And with some of the oppositions that you're going to see from this full moon to all of these planets in Capricorn, it's really saying that, you know, work demands are really clashing with your emotional needs, and you really have to avoid burnout by prioritizing rest. So I would advise you guys to set firm boundaries when it comes to, you know, your work and not overworking. Maybe journal when it comes to releasing some old wounds. And as the moon joins Jupiter retrograde in Cancer later on the 3rd, it's going to start coming into a square, obviously, with Chiron in your sign. So it's going to highlight emotional healing, expanding internally, reflecting on family blessings without maybe rushing some of the changes. And that Jupiter-Chiron square is really encouraging you, I think, to be courageous and be vulnerable, to heal kind of independence versus nurturing conflicts. You might feel like you're between a rock and a hard place, like you just have to get out into the world and get something done, but you would rather be home or you'd rather be with family. And it can also show some polarity that's going on between like parenting roles, right? And with Mars in the 10th house, you're like out and about trying to get things done, but it can really show that there can be some friction where, you know, there is like a issue with like a parent or, if, you know, a partner or with a relationship with somebody at home. So you really have to kind of watch for that. All right, so let me pull a card and give you guys some insight and see what the tarot has to say and what you guys need to be prepared for this Cancer full moon. The card that I get is the Knight of Pentacles, okay? So the Knight of Pentacles can be talking about a relationship that you have with a Taurus, with a Capricorn. It can also be a Virgo. Maybe it's just saying that this is the energy that it's carrying with Mars, your chart ruler, being in the 10th house, where you're like slow and steady wins the race, making moves slowly and like trying to kind of take my time so I'm not like overworking and like disrupting things that are going on with family, and also like not paying attention to my emotions. This can also mean that your mind is on your money, or that there is a huge focus on getting out in the world working because you have some huge home and family goals. Certainly a full moon in the 4th house can materialize as, you know, family coming to stay or visit, or maybe you're selling a home, you're remodeling a home, something you've been kind of hoping to accomplish at home finally comes to completion. And you're feeling either the physical or the financial pressure to bring that on. And it's a lot of like it being on you to see that change kind of come full circle. But if you are completing a move or finalizing something at home, I do think that you will get it done. I just feel like it may feel a little physically or emotionally exhausting. Take your time, don't rush through the process, okay? Aries, good luck, let me know what happens. All right, we got Taurus and Taurus risings. What's up, Taurus? You guys are going to be experiencing a full moon in Cancer. This will be taking place in your natal 3rd house. Pretty friendly for the most part with your guys' chart. Obviously, Cancer sextiles you, and you got a lot of Capricorn that's trining you by sign, so it may be a little bit easier to navigate. You guys tell me. I know the moon also likes being in the 3rd house, and I feel like with a full moon lighting up your 3rd house, it's really bringing up the themes of communication, siblings, short trips, and also your mindset. So emotions kind of flow through words with this full moon, and you might find that, you know, ideas or local connections are really highlighting your intuition when it comes to your daily interactions. I do predict for you guys that there can be important conversations with a sibling or with a neighbor that kind of culminates, and there is a lot of mental clarity on past misunderstandings that can now emerge. Now, with all the oppositions to Capricorn that's in your 9th house, it is kind of highlighting some kind of stress that's taking place. And the stress is really practical versus like emotional ways of thinking. And obviously Mercury will be in your sign, and it will be coming into a square with Neptune. So it can be saying that, Mercury is going to be in Capricorn. It's going to be coming into a square with Neptune. So it can mean that there is some misunderstandings socially. There's some misunderstandings involving travel. And I do think that, you know, you really want to focus on expressing your needs calmly to avoid any like defensive kind of tendencies that can kind of come up. Miscommunications can definitely come up, and they can kind of like override logic, and like your emotions get too involved in what you're saying. Writing letters for release can be a really good ritual for this full moon for you guys. And I think that if we look at the Jupiter retrograde and as it's coming into conjunction with Jupiter, really what this is kind of highlighting is that it's amplifying this kind of optimistic inner dialogue. And maybe you're learning from past situations with family or travel. Maybe you're reflecting on, you know, new emotional habits that you're working on. And when this Jupiter conjunction happens and it squares Chiron in your 12th, this is really about gently addressing wounds around self-expression. I think it's about embracing this kind of bold, more heartfelt kind of communication style for better growth. But a full moon in the third house, things that involve vehicles, maybe launching websites, blogging, writing things, anything kind of connected to your mind, kind of expressing things on an emotional level. So I definitely really recommend going for a walk, going for a drive. Maybe it can be a time where you're doing some journaling and you have some kind of breakthrough that can happen as well. All right, so let's take a look and see, what does Taurus and Taurus rising need to know about this full moon in Cancer? You get the Tower card. You know, the full moon, it does oppose Venus, all right? And that's your chart ruler. So I'm kind of getting the impression, like, is there a misunderstanding or a miscommunication you're having with a female relative? Is it like a mother, a sister-in-law, a cousin, an aunt? Like, is there something going on there where there is this feeling of like somebody not being like very emotionally available for you, and like, is there some kind of hurt there? The Tower card is like the oh shit card, right? So when this comes up, it's basically saying like something can be said that can totally, you know, topple certain relationships. So there could be conversations that really reveal a lot to you, that make you kind of realize that you were like, wow, I didn't know they felt that way, or I didn't know they were, you know, saying this behind my back. I mean, unfortunately, there could be some difficult stuff that can kind of come up. But it is trying to bring it up during the full moon and bring it to your awareness. So that way, I think it will allow you to better make plans when it comes to travel. It can also mean that there's an important document or some kind of conversation that kind of comes up for you that's definitely going to be directly connected to impacts, you know, in a legal matter, or impacts when it comes to travel or even education. So this information does need to come out. You need to become aware of it. And that conjunction to Jupiter makes me feel like it's things that maybe have been hidden from you that other people either haven't said or they haven't brought up, but now it's going to get out in the open. So yes, you may have your oh my God moment, but it's good for you to know that, so you can better kind of plan, especially when it comes to like travel or education, depending on who this conversation involves. Taurus, let me know what happens. I hope it's a good one for you guys. All right, we've got my Geminis and Gemini risings. What's up, Gemini? This is your full moon in Cancer taking place in your natal second house. So this is your money moon. The second house obviously is about your physical kind of standing. So it's cash in hand, money in the bank, physical property, possessions. Think back to the new moon that you guys had 6 months ago, where you were focusing on kind of growing your emotional and financial security. And so now you get the fruit of that. So the second house that deals with values, money, possessions, self-worth. Now you're seeing some kind of emotional security tied to finances and what you value the most, prompting a reevaluation of stability. Now, I predict for Geminis that there can be financial culminations, so things like bonuses, debts, or obviously spending insights that can come in, clarity on worth in relationships as the moon is approaching Jupiter, your relationship lord. And as for the oppositions that you're seeing to Mars, Venus, and obviously the sun, this is really highlighting for a lot of you guys where there is some tension between emotional desires and practical values. Now, impulse buys or worth disputes are possible. I think that if you are owed some kind of money or something has been a long time coming, likely it can actually come under this full moon, and that conjunction to Jupiter could be about having more emotional security also in a relationship and feeling wealthy in a sense of like connection. I would really advise you guys to ground your emotions in budgeting. Definitely affirming your self-value daily, I think, can be really helpful under a full moon like this. And I think with those oppositions to Jupiter, the conjunction to Jupiter, and then the planets that are opposing Jupiter, it's really talking about bringing up this internal abundance and faith in your personal resources. Now, when the moon comes into conjunction with Jupiter and squares Chiron, which will be in your 7th house of relationships, this is really asking you, is there healing that needs to happen around your social life, your friends? Maybe are there some goals that are shifting regarding your, material needs? And are there some wounds that are kind of showing up? And I think it's really about taking the initiative to kind of build long-lasting self-esteem. And it looks like you're trying to do that more in like a home sense or in a family sense. And you may not be feeling some of the love or the support that's coming from some of your friends, but you're really focusing on how you can be building internally and also with the support of other people's resources, so that way you can feel fulfilled. Mercury squares Neptune also, guys, so that's a little tricky for you. So be mindful that there can be some misunderstandings or miscommunication over partners, money, investments, or budgeting at work. Although I have to say, with so many planets in your 8th house, it looks like a lot of Geminis are bringing money in. Maybe you're tackling debt or you're paying things off, but it looks pretty fortuitous in the financial department. So let's see what the tarot says for you guys. Love it. 10 of Cups. Is a home or family goal finally reaching some kind of, like turning point? And so obviously the 10 of Cups is about that emotional kind of fulfillment, the home, the family, the rainbow. Are some of you guys buying your first home? Are you, building a home? Are some of you guys talking about making some big changes to your resources so you can fulfill certain goals? Are you getting support from family? Like there is something that's coming in that's going to help you kind of bring about this like dream, I think, home living situation. And so when you think about the sextile to the South Node in Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury, Mercury is coming into a trine. A lot of you guys are willing to change home, move home, renovate, refinance, change in some way. And I think that it's a part of a bigger storyline where you're getting your finances in order to be able to facilitate that under this full moon. So I hope it's a beautiful one for you guys. Let me know what happens. All right, my stars of the show, my Cancer and Cancer risings. Pay attention, obviously, if you have anything 12, 13, 14 degrees of Cancer, Sun, Moon, or rising. If it happens to be, around there, it's a really important kind of turning point for you guys. A full moon in your first house is pretty significant. And I think that really kind of just looking back to what happened over this summer, I think a lot of Cancers and Cancer risings found themselves in a situation where they were like in uncharted territory professionally. Maybe they had a job change, maybe they've gone back to school, maybe they're thinking about launching their own business. And so their identity out in the world with that new moon square Saturn and Neptune was a lot of trying to figure out who you are in the face of not knowing necessarily what's next for you out in the world or your status in some way, your relationship status, your career status. Now you've got a full moon in your first house, which means that there can now be this kind of culmination when it comes to 6 months of working through some of those squares. And this is going to be about your body, yourself, your identity, your personal presence. And so this is very personal for you being in your sign. It's illuminating your emotional core and kind of how you show up for yourself in the world. So I do predict major self-awareness peaks. I think that we can see physical vitality or appearance changes. If you've been working on going through a personal transformation physically or emotionally, now you probably start to see the fruit of that. We can see major glow ups. We can also see pregnancies that can be happening with this, or just feeling like you're wearing your heart on your sleeve with the moon in your sign. Now, I do think that there will be some emotional breakthroughs that define your path forward. And with some of these more intense kind of oppositions that you're seeing to all of these planets in your opposite sign of Capricorn, really what it's kind of saying is that there is this inner tug of war that's going on between your vulnerability and also your ambition and how you show up in relationships to other people. Maybe power struggles or exhaustion are likely. Maybe you're very emotional because you feel like a partner is, needing a lot more attention right now, or maybe, there is a lot changing in the life of a partner. And if you're single, this is definitely a time with the moon in opposition to the sun, Mars, and Venus that there could be somebody kind of at a distance or at afar that's very interested in you. And, the moon coming into conjunction with Jupiter can definitely highlight where you're so consumed with either taking care of a health matter or focusing on work that you would love to see them. But unfortunately, you kind of have to keep certain people at a safe distance right now. It's temporary. I do think that I would really focus on nurturing yourself and doing so fiercely. Avoid being reactive or defensive because that can kind of come up. And as the moon starts coming into conjunction with Jupiter for you later on the 3rd, this is really expanding your personal growth and optimism internally, focusing on healthier habits and also focusing on maybe some healing, themes and anything that's connected to travel, changing your schedule or focusing on your health. And then shortly after that, you guys are going to find that the moon will then come into a square with Jupiter to Chiron and Aries in your 10th house. And so what this is really doing is it's really showing that there can be some triggers revolving around identity wounds that come up in regards to your authority, your responsibility out in the world, your career. And it's really about learning that these emotions that are coming up are teaching you to really heal through self-acceptance. This is about embracing, I think, your sensitivity as a strength and not letting yourself get overwhelmed, feeling like you have to do everything by yourself. I'm loving all these planets in Capricorn. I feel like it can actually be really strong for relationships. It can be a lot for bringing in clients or business. And working with a coach, an astrologer, a therapist, somebody who is pushing you, especially when it comes to helping you navigate some of the changes that are going to happen in your career. So I'm excited to see what happens for you guys. This is a big one, obviously. And I think some of like the sextiles and the trine to Saturn and Neptune, I think is really also about maybe having some kind of spiritual practice you're leaning on to kind of help navigate and filter through some of the emotions that can kind of come up for you. But big changes with your feelings, your identity, your appearance, and also your body. It can be a huge theme. I think we're going to see a lot of Cancers and Cancer risings that are going to be announcing pregnancies right around this time. All right, so we have got the Six of Cups that you guys get. This is your card, which I actually really like. I feel like the Six of Cups is such an innocent, sweet, kind of nostalgic, reminiscent card. This is the card of soulmates. It's about reconnections and reunions, but I think this is more about coming back home to yourself. Remembering a time that you were happier, that you were lighter, that you were either more active or more productive, is very much that moon coming into conjunction with Jupiter retrograde. You're like, what habits did I used to do that made me feel better? You know, what job did I used to do that I loved? And like really reconnecting with yourself and trying to let that shape the direction that you're moving in going forward, and not allowing yourself to get too entangled with the demands and the expectations and other people kind of pulling at you. It can mean that you have a really strong intuitive vibe or feeling that you're going to reconnect with someone, or you're going to see someone after a long period of time, or that someone's interested in kind of connecting with you at a distance. And obviously if it's meant to be, it'll be, but right now it's more about tuning into yourself, kind of quieting the noise of everybody else and like listening to your gut as you move forward. Good luck, Cancer. Let me know what happens. All right, we've got Leo and Leo rising. You guys are going to experience a full moon in Cancer taking place in your natal 12th house. Now, when you have a full moon in the 12th house, this is kind of private, it's behind the scenes, it's subconscious. So this can be about closure, it can be about spirituality, it can be about hidden matters. It can also mean that you need more time to just emotionally reflect and rest. The 12th house can literally be your bedroom, but it can also be healing centers, temples, hospitals, that kind of thing. So having a full moon that's taking place is pretty significant for you because you're ruled by the sun. So having the 12th house ruler of rest and recuperation in opposition to your, first house lord means that you have to really focus on 12th house themes. So for some of you guys, it's also traveling to a foreign land. It means that your sleep schedule is changing, your spiritual perspective is changing. And it can have some people, obviously touch wood, feeling kind of like under the weather with this amount of opposition that you're having to your 6th house, where it's really wanting you to stay active, work, keep a routine, focusing on some kind of like, it could be like weightlifting. It could be about getting more vitamins and minerals. This could also mean that you're trying to combat colder weather. And really what's going to happen is I think you guys are going to find that deep emotions are going to be kind of surfacing at the time of the full moon from your subconscious. So it's really ideal to kind of like release and have a space to do this in an introspective kind of way. I predict that dreams can intensify. You can see some really prominent dreams, and you can also find that there's like hidden fears or past karma that's kind of coming up and culminating, because the 12th house can be ancestors. And maybe there's spiritual insights or endings that happen, but it happens like in private in a peaceful way. The Capricorn oppositions really ground illusions, but I think that it can cause isolation versus kind of responsibility conflicts. So it's not all rest and recuperation. You still have to kind of maintain and kind of keep up with like your work or your health or your lifestyle goals. And I do think that I would advise you guys to really meditate during this full moon, practice forgiveness rituals, take a long hot bath, go to the spa, hang out, in a spa or like a steamer or a sauna, and watch for the up and coming Moon-Jupiter conjunction, because this can really be kind of talking about fostering more kind of compassionate inner expansion with newfound faith and maybe, time that you're having with Jupiter people, romantic partners, younger people, children. This can also be a really positive time if you're doing any kind of like healing modalities, or if you're working with hypnosis, or maybe even if you're working with like healing inner child issues. And I do think that as Jupiter and the moon meet and it comes into a square with Chiron, what this is going to be doing is like bringing up subconscious wounds revolving around creativity and self-expression. And so it's really about surrendering, I think, the ego for some kind of profound renewal that can kind of come up. And it's preparing you for next month's full moon, which will be in your sign. Certainly the Sun-Mars conjunction is saying that it's about getting things in order when it comes to an office space, a move, or some kind of change that's happening with your home or your family life, or getting out of the house and maybe traveling and trying to kind of juggle a work schedule along with that. So let's take a look and see. I would be paying close attention if I was a Leo rising, knowing that like all these planets are going to kind of move with the sun for the first 2 weeks or so of January and oppose Jupiter. It's requiring you to stay on top of the ball. The card that you get is the Lover's card. Okay, so this is a great card. This is a card that's talking about what you're most passionate about, what you enjoy, what you're drawn towards, making choices, making decisions. And so certainly when we have the opposition, we can kind of, like I said, fall into the trap of like polarity and being like, well, is it this or is it that? And sometimes it's meeting in the middle. And you might feel like your soul or your spirit is just exhausted and tired and all you want to do is just rest. But you know that you really have to focus on productivity and getting things done with all this energy in Capricorn. And it may be less movement. It may be more awareness of like what healthier habits need to kind of be integrated into your routine, because it'll benefit you in terms of like clearing intimacy issues, financial issues, you know, any blockages that you maybe have, also like psychologically, because Saturn is kind of governing all of that. The Lover's card can talk about there being some kind of love affair or connection in a relationship. And certainly, you know, Mars and the Sun are moving side by side. Venus is there. So it can be, do you meet somebody at work? Is there some connection to somebody at the gym? You know, are you in the process of, you know, trying to find a job and you meet someone? These things can happen. But I think it's about not falling into feeling like it has to be one way or the other. It can't be all work and no rest for you during this full moon. And if I were you guys, I'd be really kind of paying attention to, you know, the Sun coming into a square with Chiron, because that's going to show you more in the next month where if you can't get a hold of some of these health habits or, you know, physical or emotional habits, it's really time to work with a teacher or a mentor or like a guru or somebody who can kind of teach you how to get all of that in order. Good luck, Leo. All right, my Virgo and Virgo risings, you guys are going to experience a full moon in Cancer taking place in your natal 11th house. Obviously, the 11th house is a house that deals with friends and groups and parties and networks and some of your long-term goals. Now, when you have the full moon, it is going to be opposing a whole ton of planets that are going to be in Capricorn. So one thing that I would say that's beneficial, I think, for Virgos and Virgo risings is that Cancer is a sign that sextiles you and all this Capricorn trines you. So it may be a little bit easier for some of you guys to navigate. Mercury does square Neptune at the time, so watch for some misunderstandings or miscommunication that can be happening with romantic relationships or with partners involving playtime or dates or children or creative hobbies, and not kind of always seeing each other or understanding each other as much. Now, with that full moon in your 11th house, it means that emotional fulfillment's really kind of coming through communities and groups or, you know, your aspirations that you have with other people. So this can be a good time for parties. You'll see major social culminations, you know, friendships can deepen or they can shift. There can be group projects that are peaking, and really, I think, a lot of clarity when it comes to your future home and family goals. Now, something else that you want to watch for is all these oppositions to Capricorn planets in your 5th house is really about balancing ideals with realistic structures. So we can see some tension in alliances over goals or what I'm creating versus what we're doing together. I think this is a good time to maybe release toxic connections, you know, and that can be about communicating your boundaries and doing it in a kind manner. Soon after, you will see the moon come into conjunction with Jupiter, and Jupiter rules relationships. So the moon and Jupiter will come together. It'll trine Saturn and Neptune, which means you might actually meet somebody through a social connection. But these two are also going to come into a square with Chiron in Aries. So it means that there can be, you know, some tensions over you know, being seen. Maybe it means that this is going to be about some kind of internal review of some of your goals or who your friends are. And then all of a sudden there's these wounds coming up revolving around kind of service and perfection. And I think for a lot of you guys, it's just going to be about boldly pursuing your dreams and doing it with a sense of like self-compassion, because there's so many planets in the 5th house. If I were a Virgo and Virgo rising, I would be probably asking myself under this new moon, like, does this make me happy? Like, do I truly want this? Do I really love this hobby? You know, am I prioritizing my relationships, or am I really focusing on my joy? And like, yeah, there are some things that other people want, but what they want doesn't necessarily make me happy. So is there some friction, or are we kind of growing apart in a friendship manner? The positive is that it's really paving the way for you to have, I think, more personal joy, fulfillment, and creativity, and also more of like an alignment with certain relationships. So, you know, things that other people want to do under this full moon might not exactly be your cup of tea, but that gives you the opportunity to focus more on the things that bring you joy, right? All right, so let's take a look and let's see what the tarot says for my Virgos and Virgo risings about this full moon in Cancer. The card that I got for you is the Fool card, which I actually really like. I feel like, you know, full moons in the 11th house can be about parties and gatherings and getting together and like having fun. And those oppositions to the 5th house has like this very youthful kind of energy. You know, you might find yourself at a kid's birthday party, or your kid might have some event or something that you're going to, or you're going to have to go and share something that you have created or that you've designed with a group of people. And this is saying you're willing to take some kind of leap of faith. You're willing to do something that's different and unusual. Maybe you're going to go and do something socially that you would typically do. You're getting out of your comfort zone. Maybe this means that this is a time where if there are certain tensions in relationships, you're ready to walk and there's no need to really have any drama. You're going to skip the drama. You're going to focus more on what's kind of going on with what's interesting you as you pursue your goals and you move forward. And you're going in and venturing into a place that's kind of unknown. So it kind of also plays on what's going on with like the Sabian symbol about being able to kind of overlook the void and have a feeling of being guided. Really, you want friends around you that feel like family. You want people around you that are going to be celebrating your wins and your joys, and also wanting to really focus on maybe where you're at in your relationship dynamics right now. If certain people don't make the cut, so be it. I think it's going to open the door for new people to kind of come in. Good luck, Virgo. Let me know what happens. All right, my Libras and Libra risings, get a helmet. This is going to be quite a full moon. So you're going to have a full moon that's going to be in Cancer. It's going to be taking place in your 10th house of career. So off the bat, something that you need to know is having a full moon here is really reflecting on some of the things that you have been really focusing on and what your goals have been in regards to your career, your status, your relationship with people out in the world, how people see you. So even if you're retired or you're not actually working, this is just how people perceive you. Now, this is very visible. All right, so something you need to know, Libra, is that even though your chart ruler is at the bottom of your chart and there's a lot of things that are kind of stirring up when it comes to the home life, when you have anything that's going on in any of the cardinal houses, the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th, life gets loud. And so you're going to feel with this full moon highlighting your career, reputation, your public life, this is about your emotions that are tied, I think, really to achievements and your authority. And it's really kind of bringing up professional visibility matters. I do predict for a lot of Libra and Libra risings that there can be major career milestones that you're hitting, reputational shifts, public recognition, or challenges with bosses. These things can happen. Obviously, there is a very strong influence of oppositions to planets in Capricorn, which is highlighting what's going on with your home, property matters, moves, changes with parents and things like that. And it's opposing Venus, which is your chart ruler. So it's almost like, in a way, there's a lot of really positive things that are happening in your career and things are really blossoming, but it feels like it's really stressful because like you can't totally be present for it because of the demands that's going on either in your private life or with your family. And so, these oppositions are very intense. It's going to be about your ambition versus your emotional needs. And I feel like, work-life imbalance and power dynamics can definitely flare. I would say it's important to try to maintain diplomacy. It's about not, suppressing your feelings for the sake of appearances. That's something else that I have learned, having Venus in my 4th house opposing Jupiter and Cancer in my 10th. These are literally like my needle placements. I think that this has also been with this Jupiter retrograde, and you'll see later in the day, the moon will come into conjunction with Jupiter, and then it's going to square Chiron in your 7th. Really, this conjunction is kind of saying it's really expanding career faith and inner wisdom. But it's really prompting you, I think, to kind of heal some of your public image wounds. And this is really about assertively balancing partnerships with personal authority. You may realize that your career is soaring and doing a lot of really amazing things, but it's coming at the cost of a lot of relational issues. And whether that's issues in committed relationships or issues in regards to not feeling like you have time for partnerships or relationships. Business relationships can also have some challenges. And then obviously that opposition to all these planets in your 4th is just saying you're feeling like you kind of want to hide out. So just take a breather, especially I would say if you have anything 12 to, in your case, I would say about maybe 22 degrees, you're really going to be feeling the effects. And I think with the polarizing energy of Capricorn and Cancer that's setting up, it's basically showing you get work stuff out of the way. So if you have to change jobs, make big announcements, launch things, stuff like that, do it. So that way you can be more present the first half of January with kind of getting things done on the home front. All right, let's take a look, Libra. Let's see what you need to know about this full moon in Cancer in your 10th house. The card that I get is the King of Wands. Okay, so this can be about you dealing with a fire sign. So it can be about dealing with an Aries or a Leo or a Sag, but this can also mean that you're kind of approaching things in a much more kind of fiery, feisty way. I think it's like a Libra rising going through some of these transits. I'm seeing it. You know, for me, it's a lot of like being patient to the point of then being like, okay, I can't be patient any longer. You know, and I'm not saying you have to be that way, because certainly the King of Wands can be somebody who can kind of, you know, get into it, kind of throw his fist into the table and yell and scream because he's a fire element. But not executing your power in a way where you're feeling like you have to be overbearing. And sometimes we see, you know, with planets going through the 10th house, especially Capricorn, there is a sense of wanting to manage everything. And the challenge is that with these squares coming into Chiron and opposing the 10th house, your priority, I think, with this lunation is focusing on your own emotional needs and also taking accountability for your boundaries and like what you need to do in relationships around the home front to really kind of protect your career, your reputation, because that's what the full moon is saying. And that may come at the cost of ruffling some feathers. That may also require you to make some big changes, you know, when it comes to your home life. But you can be bold, you can be courageous, you can be saying, hey, no, this is something I have to do. I have to make, you know, this move, or this needs to be, you know, done for the sake of my sanity. And it's about channeling that in a way that's not domineering. It's more passionate and also focusing less on the emotional side of things, more on the action-based side of things. Libra risings, let me know what happens. For my Scorpios and Scorpio risings, what's going on, guys? You're going to have a full moon in Cancer taking place in your 9th house, fellow sister water sign. So if you've got anything 12 to 14 degrees of Scorpio, it's trining you. I think you guys are going to like it. Certainly there's some pros and cons. You do have this full moon that does make an opposition to Mars in your sign. So when we kind of look at this, the 9th house in a nutshell deals with like your beliefs, okay? And Cancer could be about family, what you believe about family, what you believe about your homeland, what you believe about traveling, major conclusions and completions, ceremonies, weddings. There can also be graduations and things like that that are kind of taking place. And this is the house that deals with your beliefs and also I think anything in regards to, you know, your personal expansion. So emotional growth through 9th house topics like philosophy, adventure, spirituality definitely kind of get kicked up. Sometimes I see Scorpio risings with this full moon. They're at an airport, they're booking a trip, they're planning a trip. Maybe it means that they're going through some major conclusion in regards to a course or certification. Maybe it means that they're going to be publishing something. It really depends on your personal astrology. But I do think that I would be expecting there to be travel plans that are kind of culminating. So if you have been planning on going on a trip, now you may go. If not, maybe you're kind of planning things and you're getting things in order. There can also be belief shifts that can kind of be connected to like educational insights and broader perspective on life that can kind of come through. Now, obviously, there is a ton of oppositions to Capricorn, but honestly, Scorpio and Capricorn get along pretty well. I mean, I think I can say this, but these are the two signs that are the most focused on control, you know, and making sure that things get done in a very kind of orderly way so they can be very practical and very grounded. And Scorpio, you know, Capricorn sextiles you and Cancer trines you. So if you work with this energy, you can actually be incredibly productive. You can be very persuasive. You can get a lot of things done. I think that I would be, you know, looking at that axis of Capricorn and Cancer and really kind of realizing that, you know, the Capricorn oppositions are really grounding ideas practically, but it may cause this sense of like dogma versus intuition clashes. The advice that I would give you guys is explore emotionally safe philosophies, release limiting views. Because Moon is going to come into conjunction with Jupiter, this is about changing your views on family and romance and dating and children. It also means that with that conjunction, it's going to amplify a sense of inner faith for a lot of Scorpio and Scorpio risings. It's going to bring in this wisdom from past experiences, especially involving family. And when it comes into conjunction with Jupiter and it squares Chiron, it's going to be about healing wounds around trust and intensity. Now, I think a lot of you guys can really use the Aries energy to your benefit. It's about kind of being a pioneer and being a little bit more bold spiritually or having more adventurous paths. I could see some issues revolving around traveling and pets. I could see some issues revolving around traveling and work or health kind of concerns. And certainly the moon in opposition to Mars means that somebody is challenging you, Scorpio. I don't know if it's going to be an in-law. I don't know if it's going to be your mother. I don't know if it's going to be a teacher or it's going to be some like knock on wood, legal dilemma or some kind of conflict you get into, with a teacher or a mentor about like someone's going to challenge you. And I think that Jupiter being in the ninth house is saying the same thing. And you could be dealing with a family member who's just really super emotional and you're just trying to communicate with them and be kind of logical about timing and scheduling and planning. And like you could see that you have to kind of keep your wits about you. The positive, Scorpio, is that I see Mars and the Sun moving side by side. And really that means that you're asserting your boundaries and communicating in a way with authority and maturity. Venus is also there as well. So it means that even if you have a parent that's being a little over the top, you may have a sister or a female relative or even a spouse, somebody who's just like unified with you and how you guys are handling the communication kind of dilemma that could potentially be coming up. Also, I think that we always have something to learn or a new way of communicating or kind of seeing the world. So I think that if you are traveling at the time of this full moon, it's really important to get out and be places where you're walking around on foot or you're biking. You're getting to, take in all the culture. You might be traveling somewhere that also could be very cold. So that's something else that could be happening with that all being in Capricorn in your third house. I'm laughing internally because of the two signs that I have in my own personal chart. Actually, all three of them, they all very much resonate. But I'm definitely seeing the Scorpio and the Libra stuff manifesting quite literally. It's the irony, All right, so let's take a look. Let's see what Scorpio needs to know about this full moon that's going to be taking place in Cancer. I love this. I feel like this is your third house speaking. You get the Ace of Swords. Yes, I think with Mars being in your third house, you're like a force to be reckoned with. It's very bold and direct when it comes to communications and plans. And if your heart and your mind are set on writing something, traveling somewhere, signing a contract, launching a website, like you are just unstoppable. And so maybe I feel like this is a shift in your philosophy about, kind of doubting, can I do it? Will it work? No, I can do it. Here we go. And Mars very much is that sword in the hand, literally in your third house where you're saying, okay, we proceed forward. I love the Ace of Swords for initiating new conversations, new contracts. I think that it could be really potent, especially for marketing or anything kind of connected to legal stuff or publishing for my Scorpio and Scorpio risings. And I really encourage you guys to be bold and kind of direct when it comes to what you think and what it is you have to say, because I think that it could actually bring you guys a lot of prosperity. Good luck. I hope it's a good one for you guys. All right, we've got Sag and Sag rising. What's up, Saggies? You guys are going to be doing this full moon in the sign of Cancer, taking place in your natal 8th house. And obviously, this is the house of intimacy. This is about shared resources, so think like inheritances, taxes, debt, loans, partners' money. It's also about transformation and depth. And we have a full moon here. It's really powerful emotions and mergers that are kind of connecting to either going deeper or releasing close bonds. Now, I think for you guys, this is very financial, as it is for Geminis, because it's in your 2nd and your 8th house axis. You got a ton of planets moving through your 2nd house, Mercury, Venus, Sun, and Mars, where there's either a lot of spending, a lot of money being made, maybe I know a lot of Sag risings, kind of like November through January is like your peak kind of business time. So you have a lot of income that's kind of coming in, and this could represent there just being a huge financial kind of flux in like the best ways. Now, obviously, I predict for you guys that I do think there can be a huge focus on intimacy or going deeper with another person, being vulnerable, breakthroughs in therapy as well. I think that this is also about shared financial matters, so think like debt and investments, and psychological breakthroughs. If you are applying for a loan, you may find that you're getting it. If you are trying to pay off debt, you might complete that. If you are waiting on a reimbursement or a refund or an inheritance, it may be kind of coming around the time of this full moon. It could be a couple of weeks after. But likely you're going to see some kind of emotional home and also financial gain that's really expanding and kind of powering up your chart, where, whether you're getting support from another person or you're inheriting money from family or you and a partner are deciding to kind of put your money together, suddenly there is a lot more momentum moving forward. Now, this is really important for you guys because there's a lot of oppositions to Capricorn, and I feel like, honestly, this is just power struggles or security fears in mergers and like investing or being all in with another person. I do think that it's also interesting that the moon is going to come into conjunction with Jupiter. So Jupiter can represent you paying off a home loan, taking out a home loan, getting money from family, inheriting something, you know, deciding that you're going to make some big transformations in your home, and it's like pretty substantial. Now, Jupiter also represents you, so it can mean that there is a dramatic change kind of happening with you emotionally in regards to your physical, you know, kind of security and finances. So I would embrace vulnerability. I think that as the moon is coming into conjunction with Jupiter, you may find you might be very sensitive about some changes that are happening, but those changes can actually be better for you in the long term. I think this is also about setting boundaries in joint finances, because there is this heavy focus on what is mine versus what is ours. And when the moon comes into conjunction with Jupiter retrograde, it's going to really be fostering like this internal abundance and transformation. And it's really about trust. Now, Jupiter and the moon will square Chiron, which means it's bringing up deep wounds revolving around freedom versus commitment, childhood wounds, you know, issues regarding your childhood or children or romantic partners. And it's really about kind of facing some of these shadows head on, because it can be a, you know, kind of physical, intimate, and also financial rebirth for you. So you guys will have to let me know what happens. I think with, like, you know, all the planets that are going to come into opposition with Jupiter in this next year and this next month, there could be just like a major kind of gearing up for, you know, real financial growth. And the question is that how much of that do you share with other people? You know, are you vocal about what you're making? Do you decide to invest in with another person? Are you saving money? And really kind of finding this balance between what is yours and what is others. All right, Sag, let's take a look and see what tarot comes up for you. What do you need to know? The card that you get is the High Priestess. Some of these things you guys are like probably intuitively feeling like, oh, I'm going to have a breakthrough. Like the money's going to come through, or I'm going to have the support, or it's going to get worked out, or I'm going to figure it out. Like, and there's some truth to that, but I also feel like this is about waiting until it's the right moment to make a move. You know, some of you guys might be waiting until interest rates come down to say you're going to apply for a home loan because Jupiter rules your fourth, or deciding whether or not you're going to make a big investment or a big purchase, or you're going to cash out on something. This could also mean that there is this quiet instinctual knowing that you are kind of building on your inner security, your self-esteem, and that is only going to manifest and kind of translate to there being more kind of physical stability that's going to be coming as a result of that. Maybe, you know, you have had a hunch that this was going to be the breakout period of the year where you are going to be able to have a lot more financial support, and that you're anticipating and you already know it's coming. It's just a matter of when. Listen to your gut. Whenever you're dealing with the moon, you have to listen to your gut, but especially when the moon is meeting with Jupiter, it tells me that something you may gain may come from the loss of somebody else, but it's something that you knew was inevitably coming anyway. Sag, let me know what happens. This is quite personal for you, so definitely let me know how it pans out. Capricorn risings. What's up, guys? You got a full moon that's coming up for you in your natal 7th house of relationships. Obviously, quite the big deal when you have a full moon in the 7th house, because for 7 months, for the last 6 months, you have been actually planting seeds in regards to relationship development. Now, I laugh because recently I've seen some Capricorn's risings be like, why am I only hearing about, you know, relationships? Well, the last, you know, new moon we had was ruled by Jupiter. This full moon is conjunct Jupiter. And truth be told, the 7th house isn't just about relationships, right? If you're single and you're not looking, this is family relationships. This is working with clients. This is services and things that you sell. This could be working with a therapist. Your 7th house is an astrologer, and Jupiter rules your 12th house of things you do not see. It's kind of like your blind spot. So they're telling you that things are coming in that you're not aware of. So it doesn't just have to be relationships, but a full moon in your 7th house with Mars, Venus, and the Sun in your first. I mean, are you kidding me? You're going to have people who are going to be super interested in you at a distance, or people who are interested in connecting or talking or just kind of seeing you like light up the room. There's a lot of powerful energy for Capricorns and Capricorn risings right now. So you're definitely going to be attracting the energies of other people. So when you have a full moon in the 7th house, this is about your one-on-one relationships. And so Cancer is going to bring up this theme of, you know, emotional center and close bonds, and kind of highlighting the balance of the give and the take, because the sun is in your sign. So you're going through a personal repowerment kind of period, major changes and transformations, and maybe kind of feeling yourself if you're a Capricorn rising. And what you'll find is that relationship kind of reach turning points. So, you know, commitments can strengthen. Some people can get engaged, they can get married. It can also be a time where there is this release that occurs. Sometimes the full moon will be like, actually, I'm outgrowing this. It's time to let it go. And this is really about getting clarity on partnership needs because the full moon's actually happening in the 7th house. Now, it will meet Jupiter. So that means that, you know, partners can be telling you things you didn't know, or they're having job changes, they're having health changes. It could also be in that, you know, there's some unexpected travel plans or just unexpected conversations that are being had. Thankfully, that's going to be trining Saturn and Pisces loosely. So, I mean, it can really improve communication with you and another person or travel. Also, relationships with siblings and family. But the real stinker is all these planets that are in Capricorn that are opposing the moon, because Mercury, Mars, Sun, and Venus, especially with Mars being exalted in opposition to the moon, means that other people can be getting a little bit more emotional, and they're kind of testing your boundaries, and you're kind of having to reassert yourself and be like, no, it's about what's going on with me, and other people can be emotional as a result of you kind of sticking up for yourself. We can see with these intense oppositions that it's also mirroring ambition versus nurturing. And so if you're moving through the world in a very Capricorn way, that's just like, it's me, hustle, business, my independence, my needs, you might find that moving through the world in that way can make partners very emotional and very sensitive, and there could be some things that come up where they're feeling like you're either being selfish, or you're being detached, or you're being cold from their perspective. The 7th house is also a mirror for you, so it's supposed to be getting you in touch with your emotions and, like, you know, processing things like differently. So if clients or friends or even family are being emotional, it's giving you the opportunity to kind of, you know, see that and kind of think about how you kind of come across in certain relationships. I do think that there can be arguments, but there can also be reevaluations. I would try to communicate calmly during this full moon. Definitely honor like emotional reciprocity. I think that's fairly important. And I think that when that moon Jupiter comes into conjunction, it's going to bring an optimistic internal review of partnerships, because Jupiter represents joy. So it might mean that if you're single, you meet somebody and you didn't expect it, or there could be some sudden growth in a relationship, or, you know, a partner is suddenly talking to you about wanting to make changes or moving in together, that kind of stuff. And then when you see the Jupiter square with Chiron, this is also kind of bringing up, you know, relational wounds that deal with home and family issues, asserting your identity while still nurturing your connections. You know, maybe relationships are growing and changing, and it's bringing up some home and family dilemmas, or trying to figure out where you're going to land. Things can actually be really good in relationship land with this full moon, but it is going to bring up some housing issues, or maybe where parents or family are not necessarily feeling included or understanding what direction you're going in some of your relationships. All right, very auspicious time. I think we're going to see a lot of Capricorn and Capricorn risings because Mercury and Juno are here. I think some of you guys are going to be getting engaged or getting married. I think some of you guys might be planning on eloping. I've had a number of clients that have been coming to me for election dates for getting married. A lot of them have been like Capricorn risings. And I think it's very strong for being like, family doesn't understand, like we got to do what we want to do. And if we want to make this about us, we can. Can there be some family dilemmas down the road? Sure, you'll see that in January. But this full moon, I think, is really kind of highlighting where you really want to work together against some of the odds of some of the home and family drama. Now, the card that I got for you guys is the Two of Swords. So it's kind of like, do we do it? Do we not do it? And maybe that's also Saturn being in your 3rd house, where it's like whether or not, you know, you have the conversation, or if you're concerned about talking about things, or whether or not you should or should not say something. I'm going to tell you, Saturn's direct now. With the moon and Jupiter trining Saturn, I feel like if there need to be certain conversations, it's actually a good time to have it, to kind of get it out in the open. And maybe it can be something that you guys can work out, or it can make you stronger and united as a couple, or a certain conversation or a trip could lead to you meeting somebody even if you aren't looking for it. My concerns would be later in the month when, you know, these planets are starting to oppose Jupiter, where things that are left unsaid can actually cause some bigger kind of home or family dilemmas. So just some food for thought. Good luck, Capricorn. Let me know what happens. All right, Aquarius and Aquarius risings. You guys are going to be doing this full moon in Cancer, taking place in your natal 6th house, which is all about health. This is about your daily routines, work, service as well. And it's very much kind of connected to your emotional well-being, ties to habits and wellness. Now, obviously, when you see this full moon happen, there is a whole slew of planets that are going through Capricorn, which means you guys are kind of in like a reevaluation mode. as planets are going through, you know, signs, 12th house to your sun or your ascendant. It feels like things are getting cleared out. It feels like things are changing. You're entering into what's going to be a new phase. A month from the beginning of January, you guys are going to have a solar eclipse in your sign. And I think a lot of you guys are segueing out of old career identities. I think a lot of you guys are needing more rest and recuperation. Obviously, the 12th house can be about your bedroom, but it's also about sleep, meditation, and kind of self-sabotaging tendencies, and not knowing how to kind of balance your schedule with more rest and like emotional kind of balance. So what you guys will find is that emotional well-being is very much tied to habits and wellness. And so when you have a full moon in the 6th house, you could get health results, you could finally have a health breakthrough, you could finally go back to the gym, or you're seeing all the results of all the hard work you've been doing. Maybe there's an office change, there's a job change at the beginning of the year. And this can be very beneficial with the conjunction with Jupiter because it could feel better, more emotional security. Maybe you're working along people who you kind of prefer to be around with the connection to Jupiter in your 11th. But I do think one of the challenges here is going to be like health or routine culminations and whether or not something is out of whack. Like if you're not resting, if you're overworking, burning the candle at both ends, you'll see the full moon will produce a situation where, especially with Jupiter in Cancer, I've seen a lot of people who are like, I'm having a lot of mucus issues, I'm having a lot of digestional issues, I'm congested, you know, and Mars being with the sun in the 12th house can definitely be loss of sleep, impatience, you know, overworking, fevers. Obviously I say this and I touch wood, but there's a lot of things that are getting cleared out right now, and I think your physical health is going to be showing you emotionally or psychologically what needs to change, what's winding down. So these oppositions are going to really be showing you, okay, you know, there's some work projects you need to finish, maybe you need clarity on your self needs, and the oppositions are really pushing productivity, but it's warning you against burnout and like rest conflicts. So if I were an Aquarius rising, I would be incorporating nurturing rituals. I would be releasing overwork patterns. I would be going and hitting a sauna. I would be focusing on maybe doing some meditation or hypnosis. I would also be changing things revolving around the relationship that I have with my work schedule or food. And I think that this is really about incorporating some of these nurturing rituals and like making more time for rest. Now, we will see the moon come into conjunction with Jupiter, and this will expand, obviously, inner joy in your daily life. Maybe you make a change and you're like, wow, I really like this. And it's really going to be about, I think, bringing that more into your daily life, or having more time with your pets, or having more time when, you know, you're able to practice hobbies or be making time for friends. And you're like, wow, this is like exactly the balance that I needed, not just being kind of like work focused. And when it conjuncts Jupiter and it scores Chiron, this is definitely going to bring up a little bit of wounding for some of you guys, particularly around, I think, detachment when it comes to the old ways of doing things. This is about kind of boldly innovating new healthy boundaries. And I would say with like Chiron being in the 3rd house, breath work, right? Maybe walking or jogging, or maybe this is going to be about, you know, potentially learning more about self-healing. You're learning about healing with the hands. You can be learning about anything connected to heat. And that's why I like with all these planets, including Mars in the 12th house, it'd be a wonderful time to be doing saunas or steam or anything connected to even like dance. Mars in the 12th house likes to do that. So I think that, you know, on the bright side, if you have been making some of these kind of changes when it comes to your health and your habits, some of you guys will go, oh, now I feel great, or I got this out of my diet, or I did get the new job, or I am moving to the new kind of gym, and it can actually feel very fulfilling and very rewarding. All right, so let's take a look. Let's see what we tell our Aquarius and Aquarius risings about this full moon in Cancer. The card that I get is the Page of Swords. Okay, so this is good for you as an air sign, but it can also mean like another Gemini or like another Aquarius or a Libra kind of coming in. I feel very strongly that the Chiron square would be wonderful for you guys to be doing breathwork exercises. Maybe hop on YouTube and take a look. Pages obviously want to learn something, so it does represent like the beginning process of like learning how to perfect something or do something, you know, like a pro. It can also mean that you're doing some writing or some exercises to kind of release anxiety or stress. Maybe you're dealing with a younger person or somebody that you're needing to care for. I could see that kind of coming up as well with like oppositions to Mercury. So whether it's a pet or a kid or a romantic partner, and just finding ways to better kind of communicate and like have better emotional boundaries. And I feel like the full moon with Jupiter is like finding ways to be like, I really care about you. You know, I'll make time when I can. I can't take that on right now, rather than feeling like you just kind of wig out which can happen when you start to see planets that are opposing Jupiter in mid-January, which is then leading the way to the beginning of February when you're going to have eclipses in your sign. Aquarius, so many of you guys are going into new careers and new fields when it comes to your work. So many of you guys are going through this major kind of clearing that's happening right now, and I think it can feel very overwhelming, but it's important to really lock in, get rest, take care of your health. Your health is in your wealth prior to getting into, you know, the end of January, February of 2026. Trust me, take the rest while you can, and try to find better ways to kind of communicate your boundaries. All right, and then finally, we've got our Pisces and Pisces risings. What's up, Pisces? You guys are going to be experiencing a full moon in the sign of Cancer, taking place in your natal 5th house. Obviously, this is, I think, a very beautiful transit for my Pisces risings. So first things first is a full moon taking place in your 5th house is really highlighting the themes of creativity, romance, children, self-expression, having fun, right? So this is a great place to have a full moon. This is also going to be really touching on emotions that are kind of flowing in a much more playful, heartfelt kind of way. I do predict for a lot of you guys that Pisces are going to see a lot of romantic developments or creative projects that are going to be coming to completion, or they're going to be peaking. I do think this is also going to be about romantic relationships, creative projects, self-expression, healing the inner child. That can be kind of coming up. Pregnancies, I think we're going to see a lot of Pisces and Pisces risings that are going to be announcing pregnancies or big launches that are going to feel like they're creative babies that are going out into the world, and just really going after your heartfelt pursuits. Now, I do think that these oppositions to Capricorn can be a bit of a stinker, but I want to remind you, Pisces, that Cancer trines you, Capricorn sextiles you. So don't fall into the opposition trap. Try to work with the trines and the sextiles. And I think the oppositions to Capricorn is really just about balancing your passion and your creative projects with responsibility and duty to your goals or to your friends or, you know, your kind of networks. And so it will feel that it will bring up this whole, well, this is what I enjoy doing, this is what I'd rather be doing, but okay, duty calls, you know, I have work projects or people I have to meet with or things that I have to do. And I really would advise you guys to express yourself creatively or artistically. I think that if you can be really nurturing without joy or guilt, creating for the sake of creating, you're going to navigate a lot better. And I think that you guys will possibly create something that a lot of people are going to want to see, or they're going to want to like have a piece of, or they're going to want to be interested in kind of getting involved with. I also think that, you know, with Jupiter being not just connected to your chart, but it's also connected to your 10th house, huge creative breakthroughs in your career. And so if you're presenting, you know, changes or launches or other things, I think you're just going to have like a lot of support around you. Now, oppositions are still not easy, you know, and you'll see a lot of them that are going to be happening in January, but I really feel like it's just people kind of like trying to kind of see what you're doing or what you're working on, and possibly kind of just balancing some of this kind of creative energy with making time for other people. I would say the Moon-Jupiter conjunction does amplify kind of internal creativity and like also maybe a newfound faith in a romantic connection. I also feel like a lot of Pisces and Pisces risings will get pregnant, or they're going to be thinking about trying to conceive, or it can happen around this date, or they can find out they're pregnant. And then when these two come into conjunction and it squares Chiron, it does kind of suggest that there's going to be healing wounds around dreams and self-expression, and also any issues revolving around like financial wounds. A lot of like, well, I want to create this, but am I capable? I want to be able to design and play, but do I have the money? I want to be able to expand my home and family, but do I feel like I'm good enough to be a parent or do parenting? These things can definitely kind of come up for you. You'll see this basically throughout the month of January, and I would say it's going to really prepare you, I think, for Saturn and Neptune getting ready to go into your 2nd house, that yeah, you are going to get a little bit more serious when it comes to the financial stuff. Yes, you are probably going to have to work on the self-esteem a little bit more. But for the time being right now, I would say enjoy things, have fun, focus on pleasure, creativity, and sharing what you create with other people. All right, so let's take a look and see what can we tell our Pisces and Pisces risings about this full moon in the sign of Cancer. The card that you get is the Emperor, which is interesting. Remember how I was like, oh, Saturn and Neptune's going into Aries? Yeah, this is the Aries energy. So it is saying like this is the time. It's also about Mars and the fact that there is going to be this full moon that's in opposition to Mars. Mars deals with your money. It also is going to deal with teaching, traveling, education, legal matters. You know, can we see some drama over, you know, relationships and dealing with children? Sure. Okay, we could see that. We could also see that with the, you know, Aries energy coming up with the Emperor, that this is really kind of highlighting where you're like taking accountability for what's yours, or you're kind of showing up, you're bossing up. A lot of the last month has been about that. You've had a lot of planets going through Sagittarius squaring you. It's really tested you. But now Capricorn season is more. Now you can kind of rest and you can celebrate. You can focus on what you're creating, own what you're creating. Watch maybe for some challenges with father figures, parents, bosses. That can definitely be a theme. But I think it's just really pointing to the Sun and Mars here, where you're just really kind of gearing up and you're so steadfast in your goals that you're not willing to make any sacrifices. The sextiles to Saturn say the same thing. So I really feel like you can fulfill some of your personal goals, and you can see that happening at the time of the full moon. And I think it can be really big for some of your career breakthroughs, to be honest with you. So I hope it's a great one for you guys. Definitely let me know what happens. Well, I think we're going to see a lot of polarities with this full moon. I think we're going to see a lot of people who are going to go, oh my gosh, some big stuff happened and it was, you know, like so amazing because of the Jupiter. And then we realize that sometimes there could be too much of a good thing. And you guys will see exactly what I'm talking about as we get into January. So stay tuned for that. Obviously, thank you guys so much for joining me and listening to me ramble about this full moon in Cancer. I hope this full moon brings you guys some beautiful opportunities for kind of nurturing, for focusing on deep healing. And I hope that it goes well. So don't forget to subscribe, to like, give me a thumbs up if you resonated with this video. Don't be afraid to consider leaving me a comment below. Drop me your rising sign and let me know how you're feeling with this up and coming full moon in Cancer. Maybe what's been materializing for you guys since Jupiter has been in a square to Chiron, and what are you looking forward to kind of wrapping up under this beautiful full moon in Cancer at the beginning of the year. I can't always get back to all of you guys, but I appreciate your interaction and your comments. It really helps the channel grow. And as you guys know, we are approaching, we're getting closer and closer to 50,000 subscribers. So do subscribe if you enjoy this. And I will catch you guys back here on Christmas on Thursday. I'm cooking up something special for you guys. So I hope you guys enjoy and have a beautiful holiday season. I'll see you then. Take care.